Hello and welcome to episode number 35 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, and iHeartRadio. My name is Esports and Gaming Insider Jason Fanelli, and we have a dang good show for you this evening. We're going to talk some Street Fighter, which just celebrated a huge anniversary over the past weekend. We're going to talk Call of Duty League, go team by team with who I think is most confident to win this year. That league just started on Thursday of this week. And finally, we're going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, but I understand it's going to be a little bit different this year than in previous years, but hopefully it'll be just as good. Let's not waste any more time and get right into the 6 in 60 seconds. Riot Games CEO Nicolo Laurent is under investigation for gender discrimination and harassment after a report is filed in Los Angeles County Superior Court. Dollar Shave Club partners with the LA Thieves and 100 Thieves of the Call of Duty League for the company's first ever sports-based partnership. The Pokemon World Championships for 2021 have been canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, 6 Days in Fallujah, a shooter game first introduced in 2009 but quickly scrapped, has been resurrected for a 2021 release. Also, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is confirmed for June 11th release date by Sony and Insomniac. The next big PlayStation 5 exclusive is on the way. And finally, the Street Fighter V Winter Update has revealed new information about the upcoming Season 5, including a February 22nd release date and a brand new defensive mechanic called The Shift. Those are your 6 in 60 seconds. Yes, folks, those are your 6 in 60 seconds this week, and as always, they are brought to you by Ghost Shaver, the only razor designed to feel like it is an extension of your arm. The precision cutting system gives you a close and smooth shave every time. 5 different rotary flex action super thin blades and patented handheld design make it smooth and comfortable for the entire shave. It is easy to use and easy to clean. That's Ghost Shaver, a shave above the rest. Yep, that's where we are right now with the 6 in 60 seconds. Ghost Shaver, thank you very much for your sponsorship as always. But let's talk about tonight the Call of Duty League. Finally, we are in the main league play. Season 2, Call of Duty League 2021 has begun as of Thursday of this week. I am recording Thursday night, so I only know 2 results as opposed to an entire weekend's worth of action that is ahead of us. I wanted to go team by team, see how things have changed, see how each team has adapted to the 4-on-4 format, and give my predictions as to who I think is going to come out on top at the end of this year. So let's start off with we're going to go alphabetically, because I don't want to rank them yet until we get to the very end here. Let's start with the Atlanta FaZe. Now, the Atlanta FaZe, obviously, FaZe Clan has a lot of weight behind it. This team always has huge expectations coming into every single year. No matter what sport they're in, doesn't matter what esport they're playing, these guys are going to be considered top of the pack. And this year is no different in the Call of Duty League. They were finalists last year, lost in the finals to the Dallas Empire, kept most of their team intact, Cilium and Simp most importantly, but they also have a BZ and Arcidus, whose name I can never say, sorry Alec, rounding out their 4. Now, a big part of the league this year, if you listen to our talk about the structure of the league 2 episodes ago, it's 4-on-4 now. It's not 5-on-5 anymore. So there's a little bit more of a dynamic as far as team, the way you make your team and the strategy that you employ. So they have 4 players now with 1 substitute in Sib, but I don't think Sib's going to be playing all that much this year unless absolutely necessary. I think the Atlanta FaZe are a big favorite this year, as they are every year, to take this tournament. I think Simp is going to play with a bigger chip on his shoulder after losing the finals last year, and I think that this is going to be a dangerous team to watch. Now, I do not see them on the schedule until Friday at 4:30, so if you're listening to this right when it goes out on Friday morning, they'll be playing later that afternoon. If you're listening to the radio on Saturday, the 13th, Their first match would have happened on the 12th, but their next match is on Valentine's Day at 6 o'clock against Optic Chicago, so look out for that. Next, we have the Dallas Empire, the reigning defending champions of the Call of Duty League. As I sit here right now, they have already won their first match on Thursday night, a 3-0 sweep of the Seattle Surge, and honestly, I am not surprised when you have the MVP of the league in Shotzi, a all-time player in C6, and two other very, very good players in Hugh and Illy. There's no reason to think that Dallas cannot defend their title competently and swiftly. A 3-0 sweep in their very first match is a big, big deal. Their next match is also Sunday against the Minnesota Rocker, who lost tonight. We'll get to that. Honestly, the Dallas Empire's chances this year depend on Shotzi in year 2. Year 1, he was an unknown. He was a Halo player, escalated to MVP of the league. This year, people might be on to him. They have a full year of tape to watch him on. Granted, it was a different game, but the modes are very, very similar. The loadouts might be different, but the hard point and the shirts to destroy and the stuff like that they're playing is the same. So if a team can really strategize, figure out his weaknesses, and key on them, it'll be easier to do that in year 2 than it was in year 1. So they may have a bit of a tougher time getting back to that championship game, and obviously defending a championship is one of the hardest things to do in any sport you would play ever. But I like their chances to do so. Until basically, to beat the man, you have to beat the man. To be the man, you have to beat the man, Ric Flair. Woo! And so far, they've won their first match 3-0, and the sky's the limit. So we'll see what the rest of the season brings there. Florida Mutineers. This is an interesting team, partly because they were a 4th place finisher last year. They've retained some of their players, but their team right now looks like Havoc, Awakening, who we spoke to last year, Slacked, and Skies. Interesting team composition here. Have not seen them yet as of this recording. Their first match is Saturday the 13th at 4:30, so it'll be happening right as you're listening to this on the radio, if you are listening to this on the radio. This is a team I think can sneak up on some people. I think Awakening showed a lot of flair last year. I think Havoc showed a lot of flair last year. And I want this team to do well. I don't know why. I have this weird affinity to the Florida Mutineers. I'm leaning towards them to do very good. And I think it's because I like Awakening and I like Havoc, like I said. So this is a team I think can do some damage late in the season, but I don't know if they're quite good enough to get over the hump. Let's see if they can do a little better this year than they did last year. Next, we have the London Royal Ravens, if we're going alphabetically here. And London is a team that I feel like overachieved a little bit last year. I know Alex and Dylan and Shawnee and Zero, the team is a little bit different than it was last year. I like Zero a lot, so I think that was a good pickup. Shawnee as well. But this one I'm still not sure of this one. I still don't know what's going to happen here, and I think the first couple weeks are not going to be a very good litmus test. The first couple matchups, Saturday, February 20th against Dallas Empire. That's going to be the one where we see where London stacks up this year. So the first 2 matches, they may come out firing on all cylinders, and they may go 6-0. But wait, let me see them on Saturday the 20th before I start crowning them this year's champion. And now we come to, after London, the first of the quote-unquote new teams in the league, and that is the Los Angeles Thieves. Now, I know that Gorillas is technically next in the alphabet, but I want to talk about the Thieves because this team is very interesting to me. I got a chance to watch them, their first match as the Thieves. They used to be the Optic Gaming LA, but the Optic name went to Chicago, who we'll get to. They beat Minnesota Rocker 3-1. They did give a map back to Minnesota in their matchup, but they have a lot of very strong talent on this team. Kenny and Temp, Slasher and TJ Haley. I really like the way they play. I really do. And this is the team, remember, that almost went from the loser side of the playoffs last year all the way to knocking on the door of grand finals. So this is a team that's primed and ready. I think that this team could really make a huge splash, just like I said earlier about Florida. but and then the 100 Thieves name behind them, they have all the backing in the world. They have that state-of-the-art facility to practice in and play in. Don't be surprised if this team makes a lot of noise, especially towards the end of the season. They play again Saturday at 6 o'clock against New York, and then Sunday, not again until Sunday, February 21st against Seattle. So you'll have a couple of chances to see them. You can go back and watch the match video on demand against Minnesota and see how they play and see why I get the shine from them that I do. And looking forward to see them play a little more. I really am. I'm really excited to see this team. I want to see this team clash against Dallas. I want to see them clash against Atlanta. I want to see what they can do. As for those Gorillas, I didn't mean to skip them, but just wanted to preview the new kids on the block. But let's not forget about the LA Gorillas. This was a team that did not perform as well as they would have liked to last year. And honestly, I like the players on this team. I like apathy. I like assault. I like mental. But again, I'm not sure. This is another team that I need to really see against the bigger teams in the league. And we'll have our first chance, actually, Friday the 12th. So before this podcast, when the podcast goes live on Friday on Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio, LA Gorillas' first match will be at 4:30 against those Atlanta Fays. So they're coming out of the chute. They're coming out guns blazing against one of the toughest teams in the league. And we will see what the Gorillas can do. And then we'll see them again on Saturday against Paris. Paris could be a pretty interesting team this year as well. But LA Gorillas, I still think they're in the mid-tier, if not the sort of low tier of the league. I want to be wrong. I want everybody to be great. Obviously, it's not going to happen. So I'm rooting for as many teams as I can here. But LA Gorillas, I just think is going to be left in a little bit of the dust as well. And I hope if they prove me wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it. But don't expect the Gorillas to be really knocking on the door unless they surprise all of us this year. Now we move to the Minnesota Rocker. This was a team that I had such high hopes for last year, and they just let me down. This year they've already suffered their first loss against the LA Thieves. I like accuracy and attach. I like Major Maniac and Priesto. This is a team that looks on paper like they should be destroying everybody, and they're already 0-1. Again, something about this team, I don't know if I don't want to say they're cursed, but I don't understand why they cannot figure it out. Maybe they just need a little more time to gel. Maybe by week 2 or week 3, we're going to be talking about the Rocker in a completely different light. Their next 4 matches, Dallas Empire is next on Valentine's Day at 4:30. That's not great. Seattle on 19th could be one. Seattle's another team I'm not really high on this year. New York Subliners are knocking on the door, so that could be a tough run. And London, we'll see, as we mentioned earlier. I'm not quite sure where they stand. So Minnesota, there's this weird negative feeling I have about this team, even though all the players on there are very, very good. So don't be surprised if they're a bit of a letdown in year 2 as well. If they go to number 1 in the league, great. All these players deserve it, but I just don't see it. And maybe time will tell. Moving on now to those New York Subliners. This was a team I really got behind at the end of the year last year. So a lot of their players really blew me away. Mac, definitely one of them. And they've added Clayster, and they have Hydra and Asim. This is another great team that could shock a lot of people. I see this team in the top half of the league going into the playoffs. One of those top 8 seeds, probably around 4 or 5, is where I would put them. I wouldn't put them quite in the top echelon of the league quite yet. Need to see a little more out of them as the year goes on. But based on the players that they kept and the players that they've added, I like what I'm seeing here. Their first match is tough, going up against those LA Thieves on Saturday or later today if you're listening on the radio. But this is a New York team that I'm going to keep my eye on. This is one that could really, I think, if there's one team, based on everything I've seen, that could really shock people, my money's on New York. So keep an eye on them as the season rolls on. And now we go to the second rebranded team of the league. That is Optic Chicago, formerly the Chicago Huntsmen. The owner of the Chicago Huntsmen, a man named Hector Rodriguez, was able to purchase the Optic brand back from the conglomerate that owned it. Hex actually started the Optic brand back when it started way back when. So he immediately adapted the name to his esports team, as you would. And now they are Optic Chicago. Optic Chicago has also added a solid roster of players from Scump and Formal, Envoy, and Dashi. That is a hell of a team. And this is the one team I want to see play more than ever. If you're listening to this podcast on Friday, they play at 3 o'clock today. They're the first game of the day. If you're listening on Saturday, they've already played once, but you'll get to see them again on Valentine's Day against the Atlanta FaZe at 6 o'clock. What a marquee matchup that is. Really, really want to see this team get further and further into the season. I have a lot of high hopes. I was high on the Huntsmen last year. That was a team that I was really, really big on from week one at the Minnesota home series. And again, this year, Optic Chicago, new brand, new team composition. This is a top 3 team when all is said and done. If I have to make a prediction right now, this is a top 3 team when all is said and done, possibly even one of the teams in the finals. But we'll get into that in a little bit. 3 more teams to look at here. First is the Paris Legion. Paris has Aqua and Classic and Scraps, who I'm a big fan of, and Fire. Another solid team here. Team composition. Some new players, some players returning from last year in the league. Scraps being the one that sticks in my mind. Again, this is a team that really did not perform up to snuff. Middle of the pack last year. Really expected a little bit more from them. I'm hoping that this team can come together and get into one of those like 5, 6, or 7 seeds, but I don't see them getting any higher than that before the playoffs begin. I think they'll make the playoffs, I do, but I don't see them getting any higher than 5th. Seattle is a team that really had a lot of turmoil last year. There was a lot of speaking out on the team against like the referees and things that were happening. Octane was very vocal, as he should have been. He felt that he was having some issues, and that's really that obviously if you think there's something wrong, you should speak out. But now they have Gunless and Pristini and Looney. Nubsy is still there. Spoke to him last year. He's a great dude. But they've started the season down 3-0. They've lost 3-0 to the Dallas Empire in their first match. Granted, playing the returning champions is never easy on their first match back, but they are already 0-1 and looking up at the rest of the league. Unfortunately, I do not see that changing. This is a team I think that could be in the basement of the league when all is said and done. I want to be wrong about this. I want every single team to fight to the very end. But if the season starts the way that it ended last year, I just don't see them coming back from it. If the first 2 stages are not good to the Seattle Surge, the other 3 won't be either. And they'll be the outside looking in during the 2021 playoffs. We'll get to see them again on Valentine's Day at 3 o'clock against London. We'll see them Friday the 19th against Minnesota. And we'll see them Sunday, February 21st against LA Thieves. But maybe that'll change my mind. Maybe one of those matches they'll come out and win, and I won't expect a win from them. But right now, Seattle, unfortunately, I'm not very high on you this year, my pals, my guys. And finally, the Toronto Ultra. This is a weird team. This is another team that some weeks just come out and tear the house down, and other teams are just like, guys, what are you doing? They got Kleenex and Methods and Insight, Bance and Cammy, a solid squad there, to the point that I don't even know which one is the sub of the 5 that I'm looking at here. This is the only team I'm going to reserve judgment on until I see them play for the first time Saturday at 4:30 against Florida. Because they could come out and sweep Florida and be like, oh, we're here to stay. Or they could come out and stink up the joint and join Seattle at the bottom of my predictions. So in this, I'm going to rank them 12-1 at the end here. I am going to put Toronto somewhere. It's going to be a cop-out. Just be ready for it. But I have thoughts of where they might end up. And here we go. So now I'm going to rank these teams 12-1 based on the preseason. Obviously, we have 2 results in, but there are more games to play for the next couple of weekends. But if I had to sit here right now and rank these teams 12-1 of where I think they'll finish at the end of the year, I'm going to put number 12, unfortunately, I'm going to put Seattle. I want to be wrong about that, but again, I just don't see how they're going to eclipse the rest of the teams in the league. Same with LA Gorillas at 11. I really don't like their chances in the upcoming year. I'm going to put Toronto at 10, but I don't know what they could be higher, they could be lower. I don't know what they're doing. This is basically a wait and see spot. With Paris at 9. So maybe Minnesota at 9. Let me change that. Minnesota at 9 because again, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. They just need to figure out their stuff. So Minnesota, Seattle, Toronto, and LA Gorillas, where I'm sitting right now, will not make the playoffs this year. Number 8 is going to be London. I think they're going to squeak into the playoffs right at the end there. Number 7 will be New York. I said anywhere between 5 and 7, but they could also sneak up on people. Paris, I think, will be 6. And then we're looking at Florida at 5, LA Thieves at 4, Atlanta at 3, which may surprise some people, Dallas at 2, and Optic Chicago, I feel like, is going to be my champion this year. I don't know why I'm so high on that team, but I really, really have very high hopes for Optic Chicago. And I think they beat the defending champions in the final. I think Optic takes out Dallas to win the whole thing, the 2021 Call of Duty League Championship. But obviously the season is still young. We have 2 games in as of recording with many, many more to be played. There could be unforeseen circumstances that come up. We are still in a pandemic, so we don't know how that's going to affect things. It seems to be off to a smooth start, but when all is said and done, if you're asking me, Optic Chicago is going to be hoisting the Call of Duty League Championship for the year 2021. Remember this podcast, and feel free to tell me I'm wrong, if or inevitably when I am. Moving on to our second topic of the evening. But first, before we do that, I would put on tap here. I would mention the games that are coming out this week, but there's really only one of note. So I will give that a proper introduction and then be done with it. And that is Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury for the Nintendo Switch. The port from the Wii U of the 2013 great Mario game, Super Mario 3D World, with the Bowser's Fury extension, which gets a little experimental with the Mario formula. And honestly, that's what I'm more excited about than anything else. So if you're a Switch owner, Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury is something that should be on your radar, or actually it should be on your purchase list, since it's coming out today if you're listening when this goes out. It comes out the 12th of February, and you should be ready for it if you own a Switch. So now our second topic of the evening. Would you believe that one of the most influential fighting games of all time, Street Fighter II, is 30 years old? Turned 30 on Saturday the 6th of February. I think that's the right date, the 6th. That's when it released for the first time in Japanese arcades. And it really set the tone for the entire genre from there on out. Video games were not the same when Street Fighter II hit arcades. It soon bore many clones and other things that people tried to replicate that formula, some with some success. Your Art of Fightings, your Fatal Furies, your SNK library, now King of Fighters and Samurai Showdown. They definitely did well trying to take some of that Street Fighter pie, as did Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat obviously put the edge on it, made things a little more extreme, got the government more involved with its blood and gore and head ripping and heart ripping and stuff like that. But you never really beat the original, the OG, the trendsetter, and that is Street Fighter II. I still have very, very fond memories of sitting in my bedroom as a child with my Super Nintendo. I have the color code, so you could play as different colors, Champion Edition, in that original Street Fighter II cart. It was down R up LYB. I still remember it. I did not Google that. It is ingrained in my skull, and it will forever be there. I might even get tattooed on me somewhere eventually, if I ever get brave enough to get a tattoo. But you had Ryu, you had E Honda, you had Blanca, you had Guile, you had Chun-Li, you had Ken, you had Zangief, and you had Dhalsim. Plus the 4 boss characters, Balrog, Vega, Sagat, and M. Bison. Back then, back in Street Fighter II times, I was a basic player. I was your Ryu or Ken, mostly Ken. But I would experiment with Guile, I would experiment with Blanca, and I would experiment with Zangief. Zangief was actually my guy in Street Fighter 4 in 2009. But back in the Street Fighter 2 Super Nintendo days, it was Ken mostly when I was playing against other people. Street Fighter 2 obviously influenced a lot of my gaming back in the day. As the new fighting games came out, I was always trying to find new fighting games to play to try and give me that Street Fighter 2 feeling. Not many of them did. A few of them I wasn't allowed to try because I had good parents who would not allow blood-soaked video games into the house, so I had to go to friend's house or other places to play Mortal Kombat, and I did. Sorry, Mom. Excuse me. But I think the best part of Street Fighter 2 back in the day was, when you're a little kid who, you're a fat, pudgy kid in a brand new school. I moved from, not to get a little personal here, but I moved from one house to another at the age of 6. It was just before my 7th birthday. I only moved about 10 minutes down the main road, but it was a brand new school, brand new experience. And when you're new into a school at that age, you don't know a lot of people, and there are people who are friendly with you, and then you have your jerks. It's natural, and then you make friends and you hang out with those people. But even if I was having a bad day, if I felt small, if I felt powerless, if I felt like nothing in the world was going my way, when I had a moment, I could turn on Super Nintendo, I could play Street Fighter 2, and I could feel a sense of power. You know what I mean? Like, these were people, fictional people, sure, but these were people who could fight anyone, and they knew all kinds of martial arts, and they could defend themselves, and they were strong, and they were I don't know the word, not influential in the gaming industry, but they were big time. They were a pillar of strength to a small boy who was kind of lost at the time. Didn't take me long to get acclimated. Found my best friend, who is still my best friend to this day, to be honest with you. But without Street Fighter 2, I don't know that I would have had as smooth of a time adjusting. Like I having that anchor, I feel like, to go back to whenever I was home or I wasn't playing with anyone or whatever. It was a nice thing. It was a nice thing to have, and I really appreciate Street Fighter 2 for that. And the legacy that it has left. Let's talk about that a little bit. Street Fighter 2, like I said earlier, is one of the most influential fighting games of all time. The series itself expanded a couple of times on Street Fighter 2. You had your Champion Edition, you had Street Fighter 2 Turbo. You then had Super Street Fighter 2, which added 4 more characters. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which many consider to be the best iteration of Street Fighter 2 that there is. And then eventually, when they stopped making Street Fighter 2 games, they decided they wanted to go to Street Fighter 3. That was a big deal. Such a big deal that I played it for a couple of times, and I decided that I liked 2 more, so I was going to stick with Super Turbo and Super Street Fighter 2, and Street Fighter 3 basically passed me by for a long time. I'm embarrassed to admit that now because I realize how good that game is. But Street Fighter 3 New Generation, then Second Impact, and eventually Third Strike, which was Street Fighter 3 Turbo, basically. I kind of missed that boat. It was at a time where I didn't really have an opportunity to play those games because they came out on the Dreamcast, and Street Fighter 3 was hard to find. I had a Dreamcast. Street Fighter, and I was more into the crossover games at the time, your Marvel vs. Capcoms, your Capcom versus SNKs. I wasn't so much into the franchises that were just the games that were just one franchise. I was digging the crossovers. Eventually was able to go back when Third Strike Online came out on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 in the mid-2000s, and righted my wrong and how wrong I was. But yeah, Street Fighter 3 I missed, and then Street Fighter 4 came out, and I was right back in again, as if I'd never left Street Fighter. It was just like Street Fighter 2 did in 1991. Street Fighter 4 set the bar for fighting games in the late 2000s, and it just went from there to where we are now. Now we have a bit of we're sitting pretty with our fighting games at the moment, between Mortal Kombat being out, Tekken being out, Street Fighter, SNK has brought back Samurai Showdown. They're bringing back King of Fighters this year with KOF 15. And we can thank Street Fighter 4 for that, just like we can thank Street Fighter 2 for bringing the fighting game genre to prominence back in the day. Anyway, and speaking of Street Fighter 5, the other part of my story here today is they had a big old winter update where they're going to bring some new things to the game for Season 5. Funny story, it wasn't supposed to be a Season 5. Street Fighter 5 was supposed to end with Season 4. It added 2 boss characters. The roster was exactly 40. They were done. They were moving on. They were getting ready to make Street Fighter 6. But then, reports say that the early builds for Street Fighter 6, the preview builds, the early things that were being developed in-house at Capcom were not great, to the point where the longtime father and figurehead of Street Fighter, Yoshinori Ono, got fired without actually getting fired. It was more of a, you need to go now, so you should resign sort of thing. Now he's not there anymore. So to fill that gap and to fix all the things that they were doing, that he was doing wrong, they have decided to release Street Fighter V Season 5. So we learned about it 6 months ago, that it's going to be 5 characters. We learned 4 of them, Dan Hibiki and Rose and Oro, and crossover Akira Kazama from Rival Schools, which is another fantastic Capcom fighting game if you've never heard of it before, but I don't want to get too far off track. But we hadn't heard anything about it since. We saw a couple of flashes, like we saw some Dan gameplay at Tokyo Game Show in September, but nothing substantial until this Thursday, until the winter update. We got an update on the second character, Rose. They're bringing back her stage, the Marina of Fortune from Street Fighter Alpha 2. She has a lot of new tools in her moveset. I loved Rose in Street Fighter 4. Wasn't my main, but she was one of my alternates, so I'm very excited to check Rose out when she launches in the spring. Dan looks surprisingly good for a character that is basically a joke. He's another one that I'm interested to try his little taunt moves, where he inserts taunts in between all his moves and breaks up the combos so you can keep going with heavier strings and different options. The most impactful thing from this event, though, I feel, is the introduction of a brand new mechanic. That they're introducing a new gameplay mechanic so late into the game's life cycle, into a season that shouldn't exist, kind of shows me the focus and attention that this new, fresh team is showing to Street Fighter, and gives me a slight confidence about its future. If the team is willing to go this far with a DLC pack that technically shouldn't exist, 5 characters, a brand new mechanic, the addition of a 6th character, as we found out today, who is really just a random select. So you select this guy, and he randomly picks a different fighter for you to be in that match, so you don't know what you're getting till the match starts. But 6 fighters, a brand new mechanic, stages, costumes, all this work for a DLC pack that shouldn't exist is a lot. It's got to be a labor of love for these guys. A make good for a game that really had a tumultuous development cycle and release cycle in Street Fighter V. Only in Season 4, or the end of Season 3, with G, did it really start to find its footing. And I feel like this new Season 5 might be a olive branch to the fans, a bit of a we're sorry, let's make this good before Street Fighter 6 comes out, and then we'll wow you with Street Fighter 6 when that drops. So the winter update is available on Capcom Fighter's YouTube channel. If you missed it, if you're a Street Fighter fan, you want to see what's going on, you want to check out Rose's moves, you want to check out Dan before he launches on February 22nd, as I mentioned in the 6 in 60 presented by Ghost Shaver. There's a lot to like in this broadcast. If you were a Street Fighter V fan who fell out and wanted to get back in, now is a good time before Season 5 drops. In fact, on PlayStation Network this weekend, there's a free trial of Street Fighter V, so you can play the entire game and all 40 characters in Seasons 1 through 4 to your heart's content. I believe it's free for the entire weekend. So check that out if you just want to see what's going on with Street Fighter. And then February 22nd will be the beginning of Season 5, and that will go for the rest of the year, as I understand it. So we'll have Dan in February, we'll have Rose in the spring, we'll have Oro in the early summertime, we'll have Akira in the late summertime, and then the 5th mystery character will be coming towards the end of the year. There is speculation that it may be a crossover character with the SNK King of Fighters franchise that I mentioned earlier. That would be sweet, especially if there's a crossover the other way around. And some Street Fighter characters make it into KOF. That would be sweet. Anything that gets us closer to a Capcom versus SNK 3 is fine by me. And also, Capcom, while you're at it, if you wanted to if you wanted to really make good, if you wanted to establish a make good and give us something to make good for Marvel versus Capcom Infinite, I would be very happy about that. But so Street Fighter V is looking good. Street Fighter 2, happy 30th birthday. Thank you for 30 years of enjoyment. And I mean that. While as I'm sitting here, I probably have played it for close, if not all, of those 30 years that it's been around in America. So thank you to Capcom for making it. Thank you for continuing to support it with this new Season 5 content. And I'm very much looking forward to the future of Street Fighter, thanks to this winter update and what the team is putting out now. Happy birthday, Street Fighter. Here's to 30 more years of kicking butt. Finally, tonight, we're going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, more so than Street Fighter 2 at the moment, because back then I was a kid playing fighting games, and I was a big video gamer, and video games were everything. But now I'm writing about them too, and I'm working on them, and I'm producing this podcast for you lovely people. And I need to address a rumor that ended up being slightly confirmed earlier this week, that E3, the largest gaming convention in the world, after a hiatus in 2020 where it did not do a single thing, nothing came out from E3 last year, and we were left with 4 or 5 months of random scattered announcements, drip feeds from all different gaming developers. E3 has announced that it will be coming back in a virtual setting in 2021. It is targeting June 15 to 17, but officially nothing else has come out from them. That's all we have heard about E3 so far. However, a couple documents were leaked to the press, specifically VGC, Video Games Chronicle, excellent outlet out of the UK. If you're not following them yet, you should be. And they kind of spilled the beans a little bit on what E3 wants to do. So essentially, they're looking at a Xbox Game Festival or Steam Festival style demoing system where demos can be played by, the public via the digital storefronts, Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, and the Switch eShop. They want to do 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, June 15, 16, 17. They want to start each day with a 2-hour keynote and Q&A from one of the 3 major publishers of consoles, so Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox. And then they want to devote, that's the word I'm looking for, devote the rest of the time of those 10 to 10 to smaller presentations from smaller publishers, be it Capcom or Square Enix or SNK. They can take an hour, they can take a half hour. They would be blocked out based on the size of the company and how much they had to announce. Basically, they would look like my E3 schedules when I would go out there to LA. Just a bunch of different colored boxes for different colored companies and different colored companies that I was writing for at the time. I like this idea. I do. I like the idea of having a massive gaming event 1 week where all this information comes out at once and we can just, take it all in and enjoy it for what it is. Because as much as the 5 months of news brought a lot of very good information, it was too scattered. There was too many events over too long of a period of time, not giving us enough information at the time, and it really was a drag by the end of it. It really just felt like a drag. It felt like it never ended. It felt like it was never going to be done. You were just going to have announcements and live streams over and over again, which sounds great for a 5-month span, but when some of them are, live streams for one game or unannounced Nintendo Direct partner showcases or things like that, you start to miss having that one centralized week of nothing but video game insanity. All these games that are coming out, here's trailers and gameplay demos and all this other stuff. And I want that back. I want that feeling of that rush back, the feeling of all this information hitting me all at once. I want that back. And maybe I'm a little biased. I'll be the first to admit it. I'll be a little biased because I've gone to E3 multiple times. I'm spoiled by the fact that I've been able to attend it every year between 2010 and 2019, with the exception of 2013. So I am speaking from a place where I would like to go back to Los Angeles, as well as E3 I would like to return. I'm not going to lie about that. It's the damn truth. But I also recognize that as much as I am biased and as much as I would like the 1 week of a Super Bowl of video games, I also understand that 2021 is going to be the year most affected by this pandemic. Now, that sounds strange because most industries, 2020 was their downturn year. But you figure in 2020, most of the games that came out ended up being an excellent year for games. Their work was done. They were in the bug polishing phase. They were in the QA phase. They were in the phase towards the end of the cycle where they were knocking on the door for release, and there wasn't a lot of development work that had to be done, like straight up building work. Games coming out in 2021, that's a different story. If there was a game that was originally scheduled to come out this year, especially during the holiday season, that development cycle was very much impacted by the move to work from home. And I have a feeling that that's going to change a lot of releases out of 2021 into 2022 or beyond, which then begs the question, if E3 does come back in this setting, this 3-day, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. setting, will they even get enough news to announce? Obviously, there's still many, many games in development that we have never heard of before that we don't know are coming out, but are any of them in a state to be announced to the public? Do any of these publishers have marketing plans where they're going to release a trailer or they're going to release some sort of information about a game that you can't even see a playable build of yet? It's been done before, obviously. CGI trailers or pre-rendered trailers are all the rage at E3's past. But I just don't know if E3 will be able to get enough, or the ESA, I should say. E3 is the event, ESA is the group, are going to get enough publishers who are comfortable enough to show their games off in that sort of capacity for 3 full days to fill 12 hours of content between the 15th and the 17th, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day. That's a tall order. And it's a tall order in an industry that's about to feel the effects of the pandemic more than it has during the pandemic. Like, this is going to be a bit of a weird reckoning year for games, one that we avoided during the worst of the pandemic, but are not going to be able to avoid for much longer. It's going to be considered a dry year. It's going to be considered a light year, I think, when all is said and done. So maybe if they have this showcase, you just show off a bunch of stuff coming in 2022 with a little bit of 2021 sprinkled in. I'm not sure about that. That's the only thing that worries me about a E3 coming back and trying to hold a virtual showcase, particularly if the other publishers want to hold their own showcases too. Like Nintendo held the Resident Evil showcase a couple weeks ago. It held the Street Fighter showcase today. What entices them to join this E3 virtual event? It's not anything they haven't already done themselves. They have the format down. The winter update especially was very well paced, very well formatted. The information was good. Why would they relegate themselves to an hour at a predetermined time during E3 just to call themselves E3? It doesn't really make much sense, especially when you hear that the rumored price tag to be part of this 3-day virtual event is 6 figures long. That is far too long, far too much to be charging these companies to get in on this virtual event. I just don't see it. I hate to say this because I'm a big E3 guy. I do not see this event happening. I feel like they're just going to not do anything again. And as much as I don't want to say these words out loud for fear of them coming true, I think another year without it will spell the end of the Electronic Entertainment Expo as we knew it. May something rise from the ashes that is different, but has that Super Bowl video game industry feel? I don't know. I don't know that sitting here right now, but I do know that if E3 doesn't run again, they're in serious, serious peril. And I would hate for that to happen, because E3, as a young journalist at the age of 23, I went to my first E3 in 2010, and it was like walking into a palace that was made especially for me. Nothing but upcoming games and demos and fellow gamers and writers and people that I looked up to and revered. I was now on equal footing with. It was just an amazing, amazing feeling. And every E3 since, has been. 2011, 2012, and then 14 through 19. Every single one of those trips are cherished memories that I will have for the rest of my days, and I would be very sad to see E3 go to the wayside, go away because of this pandemic. And that's not to say that it wasn't on staggering legs to begin with. E3 2020's plans before it was canceled did not leave much to be desired. But still, I am a firm believer that there is still room in this industry for a massive gathering like E3. And I don't know how to make it happen that makes everybody happy. The ESA has to get out of their own way. Charging six figures to be part of an online event is absurd. But the companies have to want to do it too, and they're realizing, starting with Nintendo's Nintendo Direct, you have Sony's State of Play, and then Ubisoft has their Forward. They're realizing they can do it themselves for cheaper, more sporadically, and they can bring their message directly to the gamers and bypass the media and bypass the spectacle, which is good in a way. The correct information gets out faster, but at the same time, eventually, I see this to be cyclical. Eventually, the fans will clamor for their own event, a big 3-day extravaganza of nothing but games, and E3 2027 will rise from its ashes, and that'll be that. It'll be going for only 6 years before people realize, wow, we really miss those conventions. We really miss those ability to go to an event that's just about gaming for an entire week, and we learn all this new information about the games we love and games we don't even know we love yet. So I feel like I am worried for E3. I am concerned for its future. I will be crossing every finger and toe that it eventually does come back in full capacity once this pandemic is over and we're all vaccinated and everything is back to normal, whatever that normal is. But if they don't run anything this year, if they don't have anything at all, I don't think E3 2022 will exist. And I feel like the Electronic Entertainment Expo will be gone from the gaming landscape forever, to be replaced by Jeff KeelyCon, where he hosts his own 3-day E3-style event in the LA Convention Center. But we all have to say, praise Jeff before we walk in the door. I don't know, something like that. But but I digress. So that is my my E3 virtual news rant. Hoping that E3 comes back strong whenever it comes back. But I'm not sure that this virtual event is going to be the way to go. So with that, that is the end of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, episode number 35. I hope you enjoyed everything we talked about this week. If you have any questions or comments, or you just want to call me a big stupid doo-doo head, at Big Man Fanelli on social media, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff is where you can find me. This podcast will be live on Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio every single week, and it will air at 4 p.m. Saturday afternoons, live on Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, and iHeartRadio, foxphlgambler.iheart.com. Next up is Liberty Line Radio, taking you in further to your Saturday night. And we will be back strong again next week with more of the biggest gaming and esports news of the week. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate every single one of you. Until next week, goodbye.